You want to show more, we can open the mic for the question and answer.
This is for Bill Jasper. Would the Trans-Pacific Partnership have been an effective counter to One Belt, One Road?
Good question. The question, if you didn't hear it, was would the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was being negotiated for a number of years prior to the Trump administration coming in, he was opposed to it. It's a so-called trade agreement which was going to link all of the countries of the Pacific. Ultimately, that would include all Latin America, North America, and the Pacific Rim countries in a trade agreement similar to NAFTA, only be essentially most of the world. That was shot down, and I believe rightfully so. We published a great number of articles opposing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, otherwise known as TPP, because first and foremost, it would have seriously compromised, we can even say destroyed, national sovereignty. Most of these kinds of agreements institute regional and global institutions that do not just have to do with trade and traditional trade issues and tariffs. They have to do with environment and labor and all different kinds of medical care, things like that. So we would have all of these issues taken out of our hands and out of Americans being able to hold elected officials accountable because they're in this massive document, which then if we change any of our laws, could bring lawsuits, and it would go to an international court, and we would be out of luck. So the TPP, thankfully, was shot down, in my opinion. However, and this is part of the mystery, it's one of the areas where we in the New American Magazine have disagreed vigorously, and still do disagree vigorously with the Trump administration. His replacement for the TPP, he calls the USMCA. And thus far, it's U.S., Mexico, Canada. It's his replacement for NAFTA, which was the North American Free Trade Agreement, which he was very much opposed to, as were we. But he says this is a better deal. And when we have examined it in great detail, it turns out that it would subject us to many regional and international legal jurisdictions, which would again take many things out of our hands. And so Christian Gomez, one of my associate editors, has been our point man on that. He's gone through all the 1,000 pages and codicils and everything on that, and has boiled it all down in a number of articles which we have on our website at thenewamerican.com, showing why we oppose it. And hopefully President Trump will move in that direction ultimately, because if he realizes that how bad it really is, then he would see that, well, it isn't consistent with opposing NAFTA and TPP to now embrace USMCA. So, and again, it puts us under the WTO jurisdiction, World Trade Organization, and like most of the other UN related agencies and whatnot, it's dominated by anti-US countries and forces.
This is a question for any of the panel. Were any of those atolls inhabited before the Chinese started to dredge and build the islands, or were they all empty?
From a historical perspective, there were attempts to have them occupied, but they never were really occupied prior to this last 15 years. It's been about a 15-year effort on the part of China.
And how many are there?
Gosh.
There are 7 major areas that they're reclaiming not only land but militarizing the specific areas. And, yeah, but I mean there are many out there that are equally challenging to us.
My document show that there are 8 islands.
Yeah. So I stand correct? 8, not 7.
If you want to stimulate pushback against China, I think you should be emphasizing what China is doing to the South China Sea. It's a delicate, very important ecosystem. Not only are they tearing it up to build their islands, they're allowing their fishermen to fish with dynamite, they're dragging it to get big, giant plant cells to decorate people's tables, including the Ivanka Trumps. Most people's eyes would glaze over listening to the politics that you've been talking about today. But if you started telling the 5-year-olds up to the 25-year-olds in the world what China is actually doing to the planet in the South China Sea, you get pushback.
In that regard, you're probably correct in that because the 25 to 25-year-old demographic has been led to believe that global warming is the only and most imminent threat to our planet. And many of that same demographic have been taught in the last few years since the Paris UN Accord that China is the big savior of our global economy because they brought President Obama and the United States to the table on the UN and promised that they were going to do all these wonderful things for reducing carbonization of our planet. And of course, the truth is just the opposite. Not only are they doing what you're pointing out to the South China Sea and to the environment everywhere, but they've completely reneged on their commitments on the UN Paris Accord, and they are the biggest polluter. They've been building more and more coal-fired plants and everything, while their allies here in the United States, the Greenies, have been closing ours down. And so it's true. They, as has always been true in this century, the communist regimes have been the worst in terms of violating Mother Nature and polluting the atmosphere and the
What about the fires in the Amazon in the United States and in Siberia? Most people don't know the damage that's being done to that ocean.
What's the, yes, use it. Use the microphone.
What's the chances of a typhoon or several typhoons solving the problem?
Don't wave your hand, hold the microphone up.
I couldn't make it work.
It was working, and you hold the microphone still.
Probably the general or the professor would know.
They've got plenty of typhoons. They've weathered several major weather situations, and they're building them to such a standard that they're not having too much trouble with it thus far. But you're right, a major cataclysm could cause some challenges for them.
What about in that regard, the ring of fire, the volcanic possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, you've got everything from the tsunamis to volcanic actions, rising of the sea bed itself, because some of those are just barely above water as it is, that they've reclaimed. So the reclamation process is really something to watch. If you want to get online, just take a look at any of the videos that are available on how they reclaim the land. I mean, it's phenomenal. And left no stone unturned in terms of technologies to accomplish that. I'm not advocating for communism, but they don't have to ask anybody for permission, usually.
Very efficient.
A two-part question. If we ratify the Law of the Sea Treaty, A, what does it benefit us? And second, what does it obligate us to?
I'll take that first if you don't mind. I'd be willing to take that on because I mentioned it, in that the fact that we did not ratify it through Congress, we only were signatories initially, it doesn't look as though we are committed to the conventions of the Law of the Sea. Therefore, I would offer that we would stand a better chance of getting anything accomplished should we be able to break through in the UN or others to make our stance better heard. Does that make sense?
Okay. Part B, what does it obligate us to?
What does it obligate us to? It would obligate us to, in addition to being a signatory, trying to enforce it with UN Charter. That would be the only thing I can see that would change. But I'd be happy to entertain any ideas. I don't know what else it would.
When you
I would like to add to that, because with all due respect to the general, I would disagree on some major points. First of all, all of these UN agreements and conventions and whatnot are, in my opinion, having been studying them for a long time, are very one-sided. And what do I mean by that? Well, here in the as the General pointed out, in China, they don't have to ask permission from a Congress or anything to go ahead and do whatever they're going to do. They're a totalitarian regime. They can do whatever they want. They do not have whole batteries of international attorneys like we do here in the United States that are anti-US, that will take us to court on every every pretense, and will try to tie us up in all kinds of court battles that will compromise our national security, our rights. And they have in their court then already built into the UN an apparatus, which, as I pointed out, is currently the UN Secretary General, is former head of the Socialist International. All of the leading players at the UN are socialists, leftists, Marxists of one kind or another. There are very few allies for the United States. So they have their people here in the United States who would be taking us to court on any of these things. They have the judges and the people who would have veto power at the United Nations who would be against us. And so I view all of these things as a trap. The best use of America's legal and military and economic power is to make sure that we remain strong, that we remain unimpeded, unrestricted by these legal entanglements, so that we can exercise whatever military power we need to protect our own interests. And we've shown pretty much in modern times that we are the best guarantor of free access for everyone else. And so it seems to me that we have very little to gain and a lot to lose by actually ratifying the law of the sea.
In regards to your request, your statement there of being strong, I heard directly from a retired general of the Pacific Fleet a few years ago that so much of the US Navy was decommissioned under the Obama administration, has, to the extent that we were at the force pre-World War II, have we, the United States, has it come up to restoring some force? And as a secondary part, your comments, please, on Robert Kaplan's Asia Squadron, if you have any.
Was that to me or
To the whole group.
Go ahead. You're better.
With regard, I can't speak from an official capacity, but I would offer to you that there are certainly plans and attempts to regain what was lost, not just during that administration, but historically with our Navy's capability to project power. There are challenges primarily right now with budget, and I would offer that any politician that will stand up and say that they are doing what they need to do to create a budget that doesn't have continuing resolutions and other challenges that keep our military from actually executing what they have planned is causing us excruciating pain. So it's hard to hold the military responsible for their own jobs when they can't even plan 3 months beyond. So this month, this November, is going to be critical to all the plans for modernization and sustainment of operations. I just offered that as a personal opinion. With regard to the Navy currently, my friends in the Navy tell me that there are challenges with maintenance and logistics and getting spare parts, training, so they just have to have the budget necessary to do that. The same would be said for all the services. In particular, I can speak specifically about the Army. The Army has a plan for modernization that is coming at some expense of their own previous plans. And therefore, in order to execute that, they have to be able to plan ahead. They need the budget satisfied and finalized in order to accomplish that. So there's where we can use some help.
Any comments on the Robert Kaplan book, Asia's Cauldron?
I appreciate what Stratford puts out. I read a lot of it, and I think his book is illuminating in many ways. I wouldn't consider it a single source.
First of all, thank you for coming out to speak to all of us today. My question is, how do you think our country can better our relations with China?
I'll give that a shot, even though I'm from the military perspective and the previous defense attaché. I can tell you, the challenge is with consistency, it's with reciprocity, and it's with the ability to depend upon folks to do what they say they're going to do across the board. That talks about our folks and them. Engagement, I think, is critical. It always has been. I was blamed by Bill Gertz for being a China panda hugger, which is far from the truth. They can ask any of the Chinese that I've dealt with, especially in the PLA, with regard to that. But engagement is absolutely necessary. If we're not talking across the board, and the perfect example is in these encounters at sea. So we established a military maritime cooperation agreement whereby there should be discussions, just like a hotline like we had with Russia, in order to make sure that we don't have incidents at sea that become beyond a mistake and have real challenges. And we need those types of mechanisms. We did with the Russians, we should have with the Chinese, and we're trying to work at it, but it's difficult when you don't get much in return. But we should not give up, I would offer. Economically, I can only add that I think that with the population and the demographics of the world, the way they've changed, we better wake up and make sure that America knows it's a Pacific nation. It is a Pacific nation, and it needs to participate in the Pacific. That's my opinion.
I would add to that we have been engaged for the last 50 years with China, and it is the manner in which we engage that is critically important. And first of all, I think we have to recognize very basically that this is a totalitarian organized society. It is ruled by the Communist Party of China. And stop deceiving ourselves into believing that they are reforming, that this is a regime that we can trust or that we can deal with as we would other free nations. They intend to benefit from everything that they can get from us and to be able to use it against us. And as long as the Communist Party continues to rule there, that will be the reality. And to treat it any differently is to deceive ourselves. And so all of our relations with them should be conditioned upon that premise. And there should be genuine quid pro quo for any type of benefit that they are going to receive from us. It's just been all one way. They've been never in the history of the world can you point to a similar situation where a third-rate, third-world power, they didn't have any modern industry built up within a couple of generations into a world hegemon, and largely from the United States, the other Western world. And so we have built this enemy up, and we cannot continue on that course. They're going to eat our lunch, but they have their own problems. They have huge demographic problems. They have huge financial and economic problems. If we stop assisting them, stop giving them all this advanced technology that they're able to then leapfrog over us after we've done all this research and development, they will have enough problems of their own to take care of. They have boiling revolts going on all over the place, not just in Hong Kong. So let's let them deal with their own problems, stop bailing them out as we've done so much in the past.
Part of my extended 3-hour presentation included rule number one. Rule number one is regime legitimacy, and that is all that the Communist Party is after. So whether they are talking about domestic strategies and domestic peace or external strategies, regime legitimacy is everything to the Chinese Communist Party. That's rule number one. When in doubt, refer back to rule number one.
I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question that's based on that. First of all, I want to say there's absolutely no coexistence with red communists. They're out to win. They're out to win. And they're going to kill us if they can. So I have absolutely no sympathy for the government of Red China. And I don't even want to do business with them. I'm forced to do business with them because that's all our government allows now is to have our businesses go over there and kowtow or Gumsha, the communists. So I want to ask, who is our friend out there left? Who's left? I mean, we turned our back on Taiwan. We recognized the monster of Red China. It seems India is doing everything it can but bend over into knots backwards to satisfy Red China. Pakistan's in Red China's camp. Do we have any friends left over there? Duterte of the Philippines. He's Chinese. Do we have any friends?
Well, as Gandalf said in Lord of the Rings, he said our network of allies is exceedingly small, and so something along those lines. And it's true. Largely that has been of our own making, or rather, I said not our. I should say our State Department and people in our government that have betrayed ally after ally. And I'm not talking about the current situation in Syria, but we have to be able to go it alone while still staying engaged and help those people who are trying to actually live free. And yes, there are some people who are being hammered just like we are. Hungary, other countries in Europe that are, Poland, that are trying to be nationalists, trying to be independent. And they're being attacked by our State Department and our media and whatnot. But the list is pretty small. I mean,
who's fighting?
At the United Nations,
we have some organizations. I'll give money to them. No,
at the United Nations for years, it's been much of the time us alone. Sometimes Israel, sometimes a couple other countries that vote with us. Most of the countries at the United Nations are ultra left-wing socialist and or even communist.
I'd have to disagree with you on the fact that we turn our back on Taiwan, which we have not. The Taiwan Relations Act is a law, and we work with the Taiwanese very much in the area, but we have to do it within the realm and the rubric that we can.
Do we recognize them as the Chinese national free state?
No, we do not.
Of course not. No.
We cannot.
We turned our back on them.
We didn't turn our back on them, sir. I handed them 17-95 cavalry operations and taught them everything we know. We're not leaving anybody in Taiwan behind, but we have to manage it properly. I just offer you that. No one's given up on Taiwan.
I think we should recognize them as the China. But that's
You need to talk to politicians, not to me.
I'd like to have Professor Gan say more about our Vietnam situation. See, we have the United Nations, we have the law of the sea, but China, they kill our fishermen. They don't care about the 200 nautical miles economic zone. How to have the sovereign right on our islands. China is, right now they are dominating our country, and they really occupy all the islands. How United Nations can help us, or the law of the sea can help us? Can you give a suggestion?
It is a very difficult question to answer. The problem is that the Vietnamese Communist Party leaders right now under strictly controlled by Chinese. And For example, in April 1911, the general by the name of Quách Bá Hùng, he was the vice chairperson of the military commission, came to Hanoi, pinpointing to the leaders, including the Secretary General, the Chief of State, the Premier Nguyễn Tân Dũng. You have to follow this and follow that. Even you are not allowed to speak loudly about your historic right of over the South China Sea. You have no right to do that. And so if someone else do something like that, and so you have a problem. And in 1914, the Chinese sent explorer ship to do HD 981, and they planted in south of Chitron Island in Paracel, and the Vietnamese people revolted strongly against it, and the Secretary General Nguyen Phu Trong asked President Xi to see it, but he said no. And they did not do anything. Right now, so just for 3 months and a half, now the ship HD sent to Vanguard area in South China Sea and on the exclusive economic zone in Vietnam in South continent. And so that the Secretary General did not say anything, keep quiet. And so they are strictly controlled by the Communist Party of China, and so they dare not do anything. Even America sent 2 4-star generals in the Air Force came to tell them that now you want to do anything, so we help. The commander of the Coastal Guard America came in, I gave you more ship to patrol. And so they secretly sent a commander of the coastal to China to meet with China. So they are strictly controlled, so could not do anything unless you solve the problem with the leadership of Vietnam. But however, how could they go back to solve the problem? So we have to defeat China. So could do something about that. If we do not solve the problem of China, and so the Vietnamese Communist Party still sticking on with the China policy. And the problem, the very important problem for America is that the century of China is by 2049. And so they want to defeat America. The target is that. So they conduct overall warfare, but not conventional warfare as President Obama conceived.
I wanted to follow up on this gentleman's comment about Vietnam, but in terms of the United States, we have 330 million people, and China has 1.3 or 4 billion people. So their relative strength, if they can exploit it, is 4 times ours. So just to bring out the figures. But in studying China, I'm not an expert on China, but I've come up with 2 things that, and I'd like to comment on this, 2 things in trying to understand the inscrutable Oriental mind. What are they up to? And the first was I read recently a book called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Some from 500 BC or so, I don't know the exact date. And I was sort of shocked because the number of things that are in that book that I saw China doing was rather frightening. And the second comment I wanted to make is that if you want to understand a person, another culture, what game are they playing? And so what game is China playing? It's the game of Go. And if you understand the game of Go, then you'll understand a great deal about what China's doing. Right, good.
I got a comment. I just had a quick question. I had a question about the mineral rights as far as in the waters over there, and who's to stop whoever from extracting them? Does that make any sense?
Well, that depends on where they are.
I mean,
Right
in the water, in the international
Right,
waters.
if they're in international
everybody's-
waters, or if they are within the sovereign territorial waters of the claiming country. And that's where these disputes, that's what they're all about, and why China is building all these synthetic islands so they will have a fig leaf of being able to claim those as their territories. Now, under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, I see a major problem because there is an international seabed authority which is given power over all of those seabed things, which basically gives the UN authority over jurisdiction over all of those minerals. In the past, it's been, okay, as long as it's in international waters, whoever develops it, they have a claim to it. And since we are have been, until we gave away so much of our technology, but we still are the most advanced in much of the seabed development technologies. The United States stands to benefit, in my opinion, from being outside of UNCLOS because we're not bound by it then, or can't be trapped in it. So, there's a lot of very important wealth out there that can be developed and turned to humanity's benefit and without damaging the environment, and it should be open for us to get it.
What is stopping China now since they don't respect the UN?
Well, it isn't stopping. Nothing's. They're going ahead with it in these areas, and it's only their calculations, in my opinion, their calculations of the U.S. response that keeps them from just steamrolling over the whole area. Because their blue water navy just still isn't ready to match ours. And that's
Rather brackish,
yeah, that's why they're developing all these other high technology things which could possibly take out some of our blue water advantage.
In terms of their ability to extract minerals and oil and gas and oil, they're not there yet. They only have one exploratory rig that's operational right now, but they probably are looking at more. If they had them, they'd be out there, but they don't. And the same, I would just echo Mr. Jasper's comments with regard to their blue water navy and their capabilities. They're just now commissioning their second aircraft carrier, but their second aircraft carrier does not give them aircraft carrier capability. Okay, that's graduate level work in the military to run aircraft carrier operations and the logistics necessary for that. Therefore, it's a matter worth watching very closely, but they want to have more, and they will do more. But they're just now on their second copy of the Varyag model of an ancient Russian aircraft carrier, now called the Liaoning, but their second one is there. But yeah, aircraft carrier operations is definitely graduate level work.
And they are building a third one.
Yes, sir.
Esteemed panel guests, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention because primarily we're not told enough about the capabilities of China. As some of you might know, China has 18 nuclear-powered missile submarines, each one with 20 tubes at least, each one with the capability of having 10 multiple re-entry vehicles on it. In other words, each sub of the 18 can deliver 200 minimum targets. This may be the reason why we're not pushing a lot of weight around. Right. And unfortunately for us, it makes us look real bad when we do our displays of power with one rusty destroyer. And they do theirs with 4 beautiful, brand new submarines following each other in close interval formation. I've even seen them do a battle turn, which hasn't been seen on this world since Battle of Jutland. They have an impressive navy, whether or not it's blue water or not. Sri Lanka, right, by itself, proves that their string of pearls theory is working, where they have their nuclear submarine stationed right now. They're winning. Guys, they're winning. Not only are they winning on that front, they're winning on the other front. We already know they have 5G. Did you know that Elon Musk is now setting up Tesla 3 in China? Did you know that he's working on intelligence interfaces between us and AI? Despite his protestations a year ago, he has now adopted the AI approach. China's going to get it. China's going to be on top of it. China's got 100 million extra females, for instance, to address to this. China's got the goods. Unfortunately, we're not showing our goods because, in fact, we don't have them. That's my comment. Anybody may fill that out as they wish.
Yeah, the submarine, you mentioned that it is a type of 094, and they have a game at Vietnam base that contain 20 of them right now.
That's for the gentleman over there. If you look through Spokane here, you see train after train after train of coal being shipped to Portland. It goes right straight to China to manufacture steel to rebuild these islands, and gypsum too. How do you answer that question?
I don't know that I can answer. I agree with you. I see the trains going through, and I get stopped when I'm going to Phelps Field all the time. Yeah, absolutely. That's commerce. That's what's happening. They're burning it not only for production of steel at Baotou and other locations in Shanghai, but they're also using it for power generation.
Yep.
I have a related question.
I don't know, sir. I don't want to blow it off, but I don't have any way to answer your question. Yes, that's commerce, and that's what's happening. I don't know why. How
That
would
means
you
our
change?
country's selling us out. Yes.
I have a related question.
I can't disagree with you.
Sorry. I have a related question to that. How do we prevent this American demand for made in China goods? We're helping them with our dollars by buying goods made in China.
Well, it's a very big problem, and so and it's across the board, because I remember in a story 20 years ago, I was interviewing people who were put out of work by their factory. This is in California. Their factory moved to China, and they were very upset that that this was happening, and that their jobs were lost, and that Americans were sending these American jobs over to China. And then I asked them, well, do you buy China-made goods at Walmart? And they said, well, yes. And I said, well, aren't you concerned that you are aiding companies that have put other Americans out of work? And so it's a rather vicious circle, because all of us are in that boat. When you go to buy a coat or some shoes or a tool or something, even if it's an American company that is still here, the chances are very good that the product was actually made in China, or it's assembled here from parts that came from China. And so it is my belief that this was part of the globalist plan from the very beginning, knowing that if you could put enough regulations on American business, with all the socialist stuff they do here, then you have an incentive for them to go somewhere else where it's cheaper. And China was the apple that was held up to them. You can go to China, we'll even give you export-import dollars to go over and set up new factories there. And then once you set up those factories and you have China's slave labor to build and you don't have any of the environmental regulations, the labor regulations, stuff that are on you here, you're going to be able to build things much cheaper, bring them back here, and Americans will become addicted to it, just like we do, like we do with drugs. And so it is a difficult thing to now unravel 30 years later. And that is why I applaud what President Trump is doing in imposing the tariffs and in giving incentives for American companies to come back. A lot of people say it can't be done. I believe it can be done. It has to be done. We have to repatriate our businesses and our practices, and that is not isolationism. That's just doing business. Our founding fathers believed in trading with all the world, but doing it fairly, not giving our competitors advantages that we're not giving our own producers here. And so it's going to take a while to bring that back, but it can happen.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just going to offer, in support of that, the whole concept, additionally, there's the mirror image of that. Okay, China alone just brought 900 million people out of poverty. They have disposable income. U.S. companies are targeting that audience, just as I mentioned the other demographics for the whole region. Over a third of the world's population in one country, over half the world's population in the area. That's where business is going to be done. That's why the U.S. has to decide we are a Pacific nation and we have to find our role appropriately.
I'd like to ask Professor Gunn about the Formosa, China or from Taiwan. They put tons of toxic materials into the Pacific Ocean, killing tons of fish from Vietnam. And they're also killing our fishermen. So the fish industry in Vietnam is gone. So how can we get help from that? And also because if Pacific Ocean is toxic, this can go around Pacific Rim nations.
Not necessary contamination of the sea coast, of the coast of this Vietnam, but inside the country, contamination of many rivers, those kind of things, because of manufacturing the company set up enterprise along the river by Chinese, and they have intention. A kind of intention to do that. And so to deal with the problem, the communists of Vietnam have to solve the problem, but they try to cooperate with China. So how could we do? I don't have the answers. And if the international organization involved in solve the problem would help. But for Vietnamese people could not do anything, and the Communist Party control everything, so I don't have the answer. Could you?
No, I mean, it's the same in China as in Vietnam, as in the Soviet Union. Communist governments are not answerable to anyone. And if it is to their advantage to dump all of their waste into the oceans and the lakes, there's no private party that's going to sue them and get any recompense or retribution for it. There's no judicial review of those things. So, I mean, it's the same as we saw in the Soviet Union, where you have these massive, well, there was a whole book written on it, Ecocide, by two liberal left environmental authors that just went through all the different destruction of the environment during the Soviet Union. Now, all of the leftist historians and economists are telling our students that it's capitalism that destroys the environment, the profit motive. No, in a true capitalist system, property rights adheres to the property owners, and there is a public sphere and a private sphere, but private property rights is the best protection for the environment. Totalitarian rule where it's just fiat declaration, this is what we're going to do, this is our production quota, the economy be damned, or the environment be damned. That's what we see in communist countries. And so the professor is right, it's not going to change in Vietnam as long as they are under communist rule and under the Chinese communist rule, because that's the way they operate in China as well.
Pardon me. I have a question which relates to comments made earlier about internal problems within China. What kinds of things can this nation do to take advantage of those internal difficulties?
Yes.
One example that I think of easily is the Belt and Road program, and I know that they will go to a foreign country and they'll build something and then they neglect it. And to me that suggests that they don't have the resources to actually keep it maintained and keep it operating properly. Just yesterday I saw a news story indicating that there are banks within the PRC which are in difficulty right now, and they are experiencing bank runs. Their depositors are withdrawing their money. Why can't we take advantage of things like that?
Right. Yes.
I'm very surprised in all this talk of communism and the things that really important things we've never heard a word about. And it goes right back to our education. The children, I was a school teacher in my youth. And after I got married, I left that profession and raised my own children and homeschooled them. And the schools in this country have raised children not knowing their government, not knowing their constitution, going towards socialism more and more every year since the 1940s, I would say, or 30s. And you think we've been in trouble for 30 years. Communists have infiltrated this country since the 1930s. And communism is not, it's like President Reagan said, you cannot trust them. They are vicious, inhumane. They just slaughter people. Right now in China, they are slaughtering people. They have 100 people dying in a fire in a sewing factory. And that's no problem. We got plenty more people. That's no problem at all. They are now taking the organs out of living people and selling them as a government campaign. They are burning churches and killing Christians. They have no regard for anything except communist domination, and that's been going on since before the 1930s, I would say. Because every and the whole purpose is to bring this country down to the level of a third world country so that we will be easily taken over. And how do you do it? You demoralize the people. And we're there. We are a culture of death sort of country. Look at California, look at Oregon, look at Washington State, and that is totally demoralizing when people have no regard for the lives of other people. And maybe instead of reading something else, people, I bet everybody in this room has been educated with either under union organized schools or else are federally dominated schools. And that's the way the kids have been. Talk to your kids. The only way your children might feel a little bit different about this country is because they were raised differently than in our schools here. And that's... Read a communist manifesto. You won't want to know how we can help them save the environment. How about, considering the people there? I mean, America has grown into a country now where we dress our doggies in clothes and put their barrettes in hair, and then we kill the babies. We're a culture of death, totally. And they are not our friend. And Reagan said, They're the evil empire. You know, you can't deal with them. They lie, they cheat, and they want this country. And you know, why was Hillary so mad after this last election when she was throwing her celebration cakes at the wall and breaking, you know, punching holes? Did any of you see that on television? How she acted after the election? She was so furious and foul-mouthed and so forth. She would have loved to have been a leader in the Western Empire if the communists got the other half of the world.
We have the last. Okay, well, we have a special question from Falun Gong. She's the witness of Falun Gong from China.
Hi everybody, I'm Chinese. I'm Falun Gong practitioners. I want to say something. I agree with the lady. It's happening is not only the Jew force in Tiananmen massacre, but worse than that. Since 1999, and thousands of people in the prison and organ harvesting by the Communist Party. Since 1999, already 20 years. It's by Communist Party is controlled by the government. They sit under the government. Some very famous hospital killed the people, and then there is cost, heart, how much, and the lung, kidney, liver, and all the people outside China. They fly to the China, got the resources like a transplant. You know how fast? Normally find good organs and probably take many long years, like 10 years, 5 years. China, call China only 2 weeks or 1 month, very quick. There's all people coming from China. It's not only Chinese people or Vietnamese people from Hong Kong and from the Christian, all the religions, people who believes. And then right now still happening. So I bring that up because a very big issue still happening. It's a Communist Party. I witnessed when I grew up. They want to do anything they want. If you say no, it will kill you. You know another department you can help you out. You see how many people get out because they own the lands, and then government want to build some tree, something. So when you get out there, you have to go. You can't commit anything. So this is how Communist Party is. So right now, in China, they have the very advanced system. There is face expression. When you cross the red lines, and they have cameras facing to you, they know you account, your family members, you have everything about you. So they detect all the individual people, all the Chinese people. So we don't have freedom, no human beings. People cannot say no. Even the social media on some website, social media, if you have some comments about Hong Kong or something, they will be very, very quickly knock your door. Yeah, get you jail. So, oh yeah, just bring up some. November 16, I have very good movie about the human being, about China, Falun Gong, and welcome everybody join at the same location. November 16 and 1 to 3 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just call upon American people to be more active, stand up. Communism is evil, and they are threatening America. Thank you.
I would just like to add that, as we mentioned earlier in the program, it's a very complex situation that people need to know more and more about. Look for more sources, don't look for single sources, and get as much information as you can, whether it be the South China Sea, about China, about Taiwan, or any of the other aspects that we've discussed this afternoon. It takes you forever. I've spent a lifetime trying to study this particular issue, and I'm not there yet. So please, look for more info.
I would second what the general said. is a huge issue, and there are very few things more important. So, informing ourselves, educating ourselves is mandatory. We have to be engaged in that. And of course, I'm biased, but I think one of the best ways that you can do that is go to thenewamerican.com or we have some copies over there on the table. But that's what we do. I go to all different kinds of sources. We read the actual official Communist Chinese publications and all of the various experts and so-called experts, and then we try to boil it down in ways that are going to help the American people. It's unfortunate that most of our major issues like this, the American people don't have a clue because they haven't been given the right information.
Okay, very quickly, I just to I guess bring it back to more of a broad, abstract historical framework. The impulse to create a global community, a global society, was initially meant to overcome the problems that are inherent to internationalism. The problem with the situation we have with China is that we still have the same corrupt structures in the global, that we haven't escaped any of the real problems of internationalism. We've made them worse by amplifying the power that the global concept is able to exercise. So China isn't even the thing. Communism isn't the thing. Communism is the new face of an ancient power strategy, and China is its new frontman. So we're dealing with something very dark and very old. So learn all of this stuff, but also pray a lot. Because that's about where that's the only hope we have, is that to the extent that we can destroy the central banking system that's a global structure and this so-called swamp of power, that's the only way we're going to extricate ourselves from these historical structures. So pray. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ken, General C. Locke, journalist William Jasper, and Professor Cunningham. And thank you all coming here today. And thank you, the library, give us more time, and we look forward for that next activity. Thank you all. Thank you.